Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, staring at both a golden horizon and a bottomless drop. That's where Juventus Football Club, one of Europe's most iconic teams, finds itself today. This season, they scraped through to Champions League qualification by the narrowest of margins, 1 point. For most clubs, earning a spot in Europe's elite competition is a cause for wild celebration. But in Turin, nervous glances are exchanged, and the champagne remains on ice. Because behind the scenes, the story is far from a fairy tale. In fact, Juventus's future hangs in the balance. How did a club once synonymous with dominance now find itself fighting not for glory, but for survival? And with Champions League football achieved, why does the sense of dread linger in the boardrooms and on the training pitch? Welcome to the most turbulent chapter in modern Juventus history, one where huge ambitions clash with harsh economic reality and where the next decision could define the next decade. Stay with us as we unravel the tangled web of money, management, and the relentless pressure to win. Less than 3 years ago, Juventus seemed untouchable. Under Andrea Agnelli, the club had claimed 9 consecutive Serie A titles and attracted the biggest names, from Cristiano Ronaldo to Matthijs de Ligt. Their black and white stripes were not just a brand, they were a symbol of dominance in Italian football, a formidable presence in Europe. The fan base was global, revenues soaring, and the Allianz Stadium was a fortress. But cracks were already forming. The pursuit of short-term success brought heavy spending, huge wages, transfer fees, and a reliance on aging stars. Financial fair play rules designed to curtail wild spending became a looming threat. The club bet big on European glory, but kept falling short. Then, the pandemic hit. Suddenly, matchday revenues evaporated. Sponsorships were hit. The failed European Super League project, where Juventus was a driving force, backfired spectacularly, earning the wrath of fans and authorities alike. And as revenue dipped, the wage bill remained stubbornly high. When results declined on the pitch, the boardroom responded with chaos. Managers came and went. Maurizio Sarri, Andrea Pirlo, Massimiliano Allegri all tried and failed to recapture the magic. Last summer, after a series of poor results and mounting off-field scrutiny, the club faced UEFA sanctions, points deductions, and public humiliation for financial irregularities. Juventus's proud name was now dragged through the mud. Fast forward to this season. Juventus has lurched from one crisis to the next. In March, Igor Tudor was brought in with a single, urgent mission: save the season and secure Champions League qualification, or risk further catastrophe. The pressure could be felt from every corner: board, fans, players, sponsors. And somehow, under immense scrutiny and with morale at rock bottom, Tudor got the job done, but only just. On the final day, Juventus held their nerve to edge past Venezia 3-2, grabbing that vital fourth-place finish. Yet hardly anyone is celebrating. Instead, there's an atmosphere of anxiety. The reason is simple: Champions League money, so vital for the club's finances, is no longer enough to paper over the cracks. Juventus's books are deep in the red, a staggering €196 million in pre-tax losses for the 2023-24 season. That's a financial time bomb, one that could soon detonate if radical changes aren't made. The numbers are alarming. For years, Juventus chased star signings to stay on top, spending big on Ronaldo, Higuain, Ramsey, and others. Their wage bill has dwarfed most of Serie A, but with revenue shrinking and costs ballooning, it's a model that's no longer sustainable. Financial fair play, previously seen as a bureaucratic nuisance, is now an existential threat. If Juventus fails to comply, further sanctions, financial or sporting, could cripple the club. And the problems don't end there. The dressing room is in turmoil. Players know their futures are uncertain. Will they be sold to balance the books? Will wages be cut? The insecurity seeps into performances on the pitch. The fans, so used to winning, have grown restless, their faith shaken by scandal and stagnation. Amid all this, management is in flux. Igor Tudor, who fulfilled his brief and pulled the team over the line, finds his position anything but secure. Speculation swirls that his contract, which was only until season's end, might not be renewed, despite delivering Champions League qualification. Juventus is reportedly looking elsewhere, eyeing more high-profile names desperate for a quick fix. Antonio Conte, recently crowned champion with Napoli and a former Juventus hero, is the name on every fan's lips. His track record, tactical discipline, and relentless drive could be exactly what the club needs. But bringing in Conte, who demands both authority and investment, is easier said than done. There's also Roberto Mancini, whose cool demeanor and international experience offer a very different proposition. Each option has consequences, not least for the squad and the club's long-term identity. As John Elkann, Juventus's influential owner, reportedly questions every member of the leadership, including sporting director Cristiano Giuntoli, it's clear that no one's job is safe. A climate of fear and uncertainty pervades the club. Right now, no decision is too big or too small to escape scrutiny, says Italian football journalist Fabrizio Romano. Juventus is being rebuilt brick by brick, but nobody knows what the blueprint really is. And behind all these swirling rumors is the harsh arithmetic of football finance. To balance the books and satisfy UEFA, Juventus may be forced into painful decisions, selling prized young talents, slashing the wage bill, passing on marquee signings. For a club built on winning, that's a bitter pill to swallow. But is there any real alternative? Let's not forget what's at stake. Champions League qualification brings in tens of millions in television and sponsorship revenue, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to Juventus's financial hole. Without bold restructuring, the same problems will repeat next season. Meanwhile, Serie A is more competitive than ever. Napoli's resurgence, Inter and Milan's stability, Atalanta's shrewd business, all mean that standing still is the same as going backwards. If Juventus fails to act decisively, they risk falling even further behind. So here's the real problem. How do you rebuild a dynasty when your foundations are crumbling? Can Juventus install the right manager, trim costs, and still compete at the highest level? Or will financial reality force the club into a prolonged slump, one that even Champions League football can't prevent? We definitely made some mistakes during the season, midfielder Manuel Locatelli admitted after the final match, but the Champions League was one of our goals and we made it. That sense of relief, tinged with regret, sums up the mood in Turin. Survival for now, but real progress and security remain elusive. There are those who believe that Juventus's best option is to double down on youth, to trust in their academy, to sell high earners, and rebuild patiently, just as Italian football did after its last great financial crisis. Others argue that only a high-profile manager, backed by serious investment, can restore the team's aura and draw in world-class talent. But both paths are fraught with risk. Lean too hard on youth, and results may suffer in the short term, alienating fans and sponsors. Bet everything on a superstar manager and expensive signings, and the financial crunch could grow even more acute. Is there a third path, a way to balance ambition with prudence? As the dust settles on a dramatic season, Juventus stands at a crossroads. Every decision in the coming weeks will shape their destiny, not just for next season, but potentially for a generation. Will they make the bold cuts and strategic hires needed to save the club? Or will short-term expedients win out, storing up even more trouble for the future? Right now, the only certainty is uncertainty. And as rumors about Conte returning swirl, while the specter of more forced sales and managerial chaos looms, the Juventus faithful can only watch and hope. But as the football world waits for Juventus's next move, one question overshadows all the rest. With sky-high expectations and mounting financial pressure, is there any way out of this trap? Or has one of Europe's greatest clubs finally run out of luck? As the smoke settles over Juventus's dramatic final day triumph, the real storm now begins. The roar of Champions League qualification masks a much tougher opponent off the pitch, a reckoning with financial, managerial, and structural crises that threaten the very identity of one of Europe's most storied clubs. Let's look ahead, to the crossroads awaiting Juventus, a future laced with uncertainty, risk, but also perhaps the seeds of a new era. Because right now, every decision made in the boardroom, every signature on a contract, may decide if Juventus will climb back to the very top or spiral into a decline from which they might not return for years. First, the coaching conundrum. Despite guiding the club to its minimum goal, Igor Tudor's future hangs by a thread. While his tactical pragmatism brought some stability, he was, from day one, seen as a caretaker. The front office wavers, torn between names that symbolize very different futures. Antonio Conte, the prodigal son turned serial winner, stands in the wings. His tactical discipline and fiery passion could inject Juventus with the fighting spirit it's badly missed in recent years. Conte doesn't accept excuses. He brings a mentality that transforms squads, says Italian football analyst Gabriele Marcotti. But Conte's methodology demands significant investment in the playing staff, and in a moment of belt-tightening, can Juventus truly afford to back his vision? Roberto Mancini is another intriguing but risky prospect. His openness to a short-term contract, as sources suggest, could offer breathing room, a stabilizing hand amid the maelstrom. But hiring Mancini would be a stopgap, not a revolution, and Juventus fans are desperate for a long-term project, not just a patch over growing cracks. While the managerial search drags on, the looming specter of financial fair play becomes impossible to ignore. Juventus's $196 million pre-tax loss for the 2023-24 season isn't just a number on a balance sheet. It points to difficult sacrifices ahead: the likely sale of crucial players, the end of certain luxuries in the transfer market, and the need for ruthless cost-cutting. If they don't get their house in order, UEFA's sanctions could exclude them from Europe altogether, an unthinkable catastrophe just a few years after reaching Champions League finals. This is where the club's internal fractures become dangerous. John Elkann, powerful figurehead of the Agnelli dynasty, is reportedly questioning every aspect of Juventus, from sporting director Cristiano Giuntoli down to medical staff and scouting departments. Uncertainty breeds instability. Players sense it, agents circle like sharks, and rivals in Serie A see an opening. So what are the paths ahead? Let's break it down. In one scenario, Juventus convince Conte to return. They sell a star or two, perhaps Dusan Vlahovic or Federico Chiesa, to fund smart, targeted signings. Conte imposes his trademark 3-5-2, brings discipline to a leaky defense, and, within a year, the club is competitive at the very top of Serie A. The fans return in full voice, the club's identity reforged in Conte's intense image. The message, Juventus is back. But what if the project falters? Without the funds to give Conte the squad he needs, results suffer and tensions rise. Conte's patience famously has limits. If he walks, Juventus could be left with an aging, unbalanced squad, a fractured dressing room, and an even tougher rebuild. Alternatively, the club could go for youth, relying heavily on academy products and shrewd budget signings. With FFP restrictions, this might not even be a choice, but a necessity. The risk? A season or two outside the title race, painful for fans used to dominance. The reward? A new generation molded in black and white, hungry and eager, perhaps laying the foundation for sustainable success. A Juventus 2.0, smarter and leaner. There's also the risk of managerial musical chairs, a series of short-term appointments that bring no real vision. We've seen this before, big clubs spiraling as directors and coaches change too often, leaving players confused and supporters alienated. That's the nightmare vision. Juventus slide into mediocrity, losing ground not just to the Milan clubs and Napoli, but also to upstart sides hungry for their spot in the top four. What do the experts say? Former director Giuseppe Marotta warned in an interview, Juventus cannot afford to repeat past mistakes. If they gamble with quick fixes, the club may find itself paying the price for years. But what about the fans? At the heart of this turbulence is a fan base torn between nostalgia for the glory years and anxieties about the future. They want ambition, but also crave a plan, a blueprint. The days of mega signings and easy titles are gone, at least for now. And we haven't even mentioned the increased competitiveness of Serie A. Roma, revitalized under new management, and Atalanta, ever resilient, are both gunning for top four, while Napoli, under Conte, could become a juggernaut. Every slip by Juventus could be punished. There is truly no margin for error. So where does this leave Juventus, and more importantly, what can we, as football fans, learn from this saga? First, the story of Juventus is a living lesson in the volatility of modern football. Even the giants can stumble. No legacy is safe from mismanagement, complacency, or financial irresponsibility. We should remember that a club's brand, its fan loyalty, even decades at the top, none of it offers immunity when the fundamentals go awry. The Juventus crisis also shows the hidden dangers of short-term thinking. The relentless chase for immediate glory, be it a quick fix on the coaching bench or a record signing, can paper over cracks only so long. When the bills come due, whether in FFP penalties or a squad too old and expensive to refresh, the reckoning is brutal. For viewers who follow football beyond the pitch, this is a masterclass in club management. Watch how Juventus balance the equation. Big-name coach versus budget constraints. Short-term results versus sustainable growth. Hero signings versus youth promotion. There are lessons here for any aspiring executive, coach, or even a fan dreaming of running a club in Football Manager. At the same time, there's inspiration to be found. Juventus, for all their current struggles, have a proven track record of reinvention. After the Calciopoli scandal in 2006, the club rebuilt from Serie B to become serial champions within a decade. The club's DNA is, in many ways, tied to adaptation and defiance in the face of adversity. But here's a secret that few outside the club's inner circle know. In the midst of all this chaos, Juventus's youth academy has quietly been producing some of the most promising talents in Italy. Insiders say the next golden generation is even closer than fans realize. If the club leans into this unexpected strength, it could emerge not just as a richer, but as a smarter, more resilient force in Europe. And that's perhaps the most powerful lesson of all. Greatness in football is not about never falling, but about always getting back up, smarter and stronger each time. So, will Juventus rebuild and remain competitive, or slide further into decline? The answer, as always in football, is not written in stone. This summer will be decisive. The choices of manager, strategy, and player trading will send the old lady down one path or another. But don't write them off just yet. History says Juventus don't stay down for long. The question is not just whether they will survive, but how, and in what form, they rise again. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the crossroads facing Juventus, now it's your turn. What would you do if you were sitting in the boardroom? Would you risk everything on Conte or build slowly with youth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you believe the Bianconeri can come back stronger, subscribe for more stories at the heart.